All right, hello everyone. This is Unit 1.2, Day 5. This video is specifically going to be on the isosceles triangles. There'll be a separate one on equilateral, which is on the back side of this notes page. So if you remember from when you were taught previously, isosceles triangles are triangles that have two sides that are congruent. Okay? Remember, congruent means equal to each other. So if you don't remember that, might want to write that down. What this theorem says is pretty simple. If two sides of a triangle are congruent, so if it's isosceles, then the angles opposite them have to be congruent as well. So in other words, if I say that AB is congruent to AC, that's what those little tick marks mean, those little lines right there. That signifies that this side is congruent to this side. It means that the angles that are opposite from them are also congruent. Well, how do I know what angle is opposite from the side? If I go from that tick mark and I kind of make like a rocket ship across, I'm going to hit that angle. So that's the angle that's across from AC. If I go from this side, kind of do a little rocket ship across, bloop, then I'm going to hit angle C. Those are the two angles that are opposite from the sides. What this theorem says, if these two sides are equal, it must mean that these angles have to be equal to each other. And the opposite is true. If the angles are congruent, the sides have to be congruent. So it's kind of a vice versa sort of thing. If you have two angles that are equal in a triangle, the two sides opposite them automatically have to be equal. All right, so something to kind of keep in mind as we're going through this isosceles section. So example number 1, again, these little tick marks here show us that it's isosceles. Feel free to draw your little rocket ship line. So going from the tick mark, here's the angle right across from there. And from this tick mark, rocket ship, over the other side. That means that this angle and this angle are congruent. Okay, well, it tells us one of them is 50. Congruent means equal. That means this angle also has to be 50. Okay, not rocket science here. Now, from your last lesson, you learned that the three angles in a triangle have to add up to how much? 180. Okay, I'm going to even draw out our little formula that we talked about. We know one of them's 50. We know a second one is 50. The third one is x. Okay, now it's just a matter of solving like we normally have been. 50 and 50 together make 100. And a lot of you guys can already kind of figure out what x is in your head. If you're struggling though, just do a little algebra. Get x by itself. And we end up with x equals 80. Some of you guys could have done some of that calculation in your head or just on your calculator if you realize that those two together make 100. Got to take it from 180. Same idea. All right, looking at the next one, we've got two angles that are marked as congruent. Those little arches mean that those two are congruent. So I'm going to do the opposite now. I'm going to start at the angle and go right across from it. There's the side. There's one of its sides that's opposite. And if I do the same thing over here, there's the opposite side. So those two sides have to be congruent to each other. So if one of them is 8, that means x must be equal to 8. Remember, congruent means equal to. If two things are equal, set them equal to each other. Okay, so those are just the very basic versions of these types of problems, just the simplest kind of form. Now we're starting to get into a little bit more in-depth stuff, but still the same concept. My goodness, this scroller thing wants to keep moving. Okay, hopefully it stays now. All right, so same as before. If two sides are equal, two angles are equal. I'm going to keep drilling that into your brain. If two sides are equal, two angles are equal in a triangle. We've got two tick marks here that show that those sides are the same. If I go right across from that side, I hit this angle. And if I go right across from that side, I get that angle. So those are my congruent angles. Remember, congruent means equal to each other. Okay, that means, ooh, that was poorly drawn. Let's try that again. That means that those two angles have to be equal. So let me erase a little bit of this. I know which angles I'm talking about. Okay, this one and this one are equal. All right, well, I've got that one of them is 45 and the other one has a 2 there. Okay, now that does not mean that I put a 2 here and say 45 equals 2. First of all, that doesn't even make sense. Okay, that's not logical. Let's look at the rest of the problem. Read the whole thing. Notice up here, they've got a piece that says the measure of angle 2 is 5x minus 5. That means that 5x minus 5 was too big of a expression to put in this little spot, so they put a 2 here and then put the equation over there. Okay, so we're not going to put a 2 here. That's not what the angle actually is. That's just a symbol for the angle. Okay, it's like A or B or C. So we're really going to put 5x minus 5 there. From that point, now it's just some algebra. I want to get x by itself. So I need to start with the adding and subtracting portion. It's being subtracted, so I'm going to add 5 to both sides. And remember, if you're having trouble with any of the stuff that I'm going over, please feel free to stop and raise your hand, ask for some help, ask for some clarification, or pause and rewind if you need to hear something again. That's what's awesome about video lessons, is you can hear it more than once. You can go back, you can review, you can listen to it again if you need to. Any of that works. Okay, now 5 next to x means 5 times x. Well, how do you get rid of multiplication? Division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 5. And that shows me that x is actually equal to 10. All right, so x has been solved for there. Okay, still the same idea. If I have 2 angles that are the same, there must be 2 sides that are the same. Now they've given us all 3 sides, so I need to be careful about which sides I determine are equal. So start at your angle again, and some of you might be like, why am I doing this? This is so easy. Well, that's great, but if you pick the wrong side, you're going to feel kind of foolish. So practice doing this so that you get the correct sides. Okay, so the 2 sides that are equal to each other are this one and this one. You do not have to use every single number in a problem. Just because there's a 7, a 4, and a 2x plus 25 there does not mean you're going to use all of those numbers. Okay, in fact, with this one, you don't use all of them. There are only 2 sides that are equal to each other. That's why I only have 2 lines here. I have to use this one. Okay, I got to use the thing that's got x in it. But is that equal to another side? Yes, it is. This one is congruent to the 7. So that's 7, and that's 2x plus 25. Notice there is no 4 anywhere in my problem because it's not a part of the math. Okay, do not just throw in numbers just to make it work. I want to get x by itself. So I can't deal with the multiplication and division until I get rid of all the adding and subtracting. So let's move 25 to the other side. Those go away. I have 2x is equal to negative 18, I believe. 2x is the same as 2 times x. So to get rid of multiplication, I divide. And we get that x is equal to negative 9 as our answer. Okay, this says 7 minus 25, by the way. Don't get confused with this bar as being division. That's just the line from our equation. The remaining problems on this page are your assignment. So these 3 problems you need to do and get checked off before you move on to the equilateral section. Make sure you listen to your teacher for directions because we might be doing that section on a different day. We might only be doing isosceles today. Maybe we're doing both depending on how well the class is going. So make sure you do these 3 and then check with your teacher for directions on what to do next.